right. Again, another story from our series of 100 examples and stories of side hustles and increasing income. And this is going to be an example of branding and utilizing platforms to be able to, again, earn income. I've got the Violin Guy, and he's been building his brand on TikTok, Instagram, and also YouTube. And how many subscribers do you have across all platforms?
Across all platforms, I almost have 40 on TikTok. So another 60 plus another 10. So we're sitting at right under 100K, maybe about 80,000 in total across all of them. But when it comes to views wise, I'm sitting at right about 20, 25 million, I think, in total.
Okay. And your background is what?
So my background is in worship arts technology. So I have a pseudo theology degree from Missouri Baptist University. I took about 7 theology courses and went to Israel. And then I have extensive um, experience in Pro Tools, Photoshop, Premiere Pro, and all like production softwares, basically.
Okay. And so at this point right now, you're earning money off of Spotify as one
Correct.
example
Correct.
because of the music that you produced essentially on your own
Yes.
and putting it out there. Can you explain a little bit about that part of it real quick?
Yeah, no, the way that I make music and everything, it's 100% self-engineered and self-written. I work with a number of different producers because I'm not the greatest at making drums or beats or things like that, but I like the collaboration process of music. Music isn't an individual thing. There are teams of people who help songwriters out there. So I work with 2 or 3 producers that I'm pretty close with, and then they give me a beat, I cut it up, make it the story that I want to tell, go into the studio, record, and then mix and master it and put it out on Spotify. And that's my main like source of revenue right now. And then my second source of revenue would probably be like ad reads and things like that. But yeah, that's what I'm currently doing.
Okay. So you say ad reads, what does that mean?
So ad reads are like when a company will reach out to me and then be like, "Hey, we saw that you have a pretty good audience. Would you mind promoting this product?" Or we'll pay you commission, which is typically what they want to do. They don't want to pay you outright. I don't do those. Typically, they pay me per video, and depending on the size of the company, I'll set a different budget for what they need. But if they're going to give me samples, I also would like to do like giveaways for my audience because then I'm not I'm not any money deep, and the people enjoy it when they get free stuff. So that's how I typically do ad reads.
Okay. So what would be an example of a platform that that's happened on or a brand? Are you okay sharing that?
Yeah, well, I just talked to one brand who was doing stuff on the TikTok shop, and I turned them down because I don't like how the TikTok shop is run and things like that. But I did a ad for Metronaut that they were pretty happy with. Metronaut is a practicing app for violinists and like people who want to practice classical music and stuff out there. But I still have a subscription to Metronaut. They're pretty great. And they said, "Yeah, we'll give you $400 to do an ad read on TikTok." And that was my first ad read. And I still really like them. They're still real nice guys. They're just app developers that want to help musicians get better at their instrument. So
I think I first saw your stuff on TikTok, if I remember.
mhm.
I forget, but you got basically 40,000 followers there.
Correct.
And how would you describe kind of your content? I would use the word skit, as part of it. How would you describe your
Yeah,
your format?
my content originally was very just like violin, but as I have learned through making massive amounts of quantities of content, I think I have over 2,000 videos on TikTok from specifically back in like 2020, 2021 when I was just starting because I knew it was take me a while to find out what I really was good at. And it wasn't until January of this year where I really found that specific niche of storytelling and mixing my skits and with my music. And that's what I'm kind of focused on now because people just enjoy it when original content is being made and people enjoy stories. So that's kind of the route of content that I've went down that I'm pretty happy with how it's going so far. I can't wait to see what it'll be like in 2 or 3 years because I think we first talked 2 years ago, a year ago. think it was a year ago at this point.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I think it was like summertime of 23
summertime, yeah.
is when the first episode came out on the podcast. Yeah.
Yep. And now a year since then, I've really found my own like style of like what I wear in every video and the style of videos that I do. And everyone is really starting to pay attention to what I'm doing now and getting some props and respect from everyone of like, okay, we see the videos that you're doing there. You're not like everyone else. You kind of have this own style and brand, which is a good thing. I've been waiting for that. But yeah.
Yes. So if you're listening to this, a couple things. Check out any of his platforms, and it's just Violin Guy, right?
Yeah, that's it. It's real
Violin
simple.
Guy. You can search for it. You'll find it. Uh,
Mhm.
David, dark hair, wearing dark outfits. That's what you'll see on there.
I'll wear a hat
Uh,
and play the violin. That's about
and
it.
then
That's
tell
how you
me,
know it.
and then Spotify, Apple Music,
Yep.
or the same moniker, same name.
Everything is Violin Guy. Yep.
The first song I heard was "Hopeless."
Yep.
That popped out that I saw. Like, oh, damn. Okay. Like it sounds like I'm, walking, listening to a Game of Thrones episode.
Yeah.
That type of just, very cool feel.
Yeah, I really like that style of like cinematic music, and like my main inspirations for like my artistry and stuff like that are more like NF and Tommy Prophet and those guys in that epic lane of like orchestral music. And that's the new thing that's becoming popular is the cinematic orchestral music. And you can see that in Jake and a few like Benny Benson where they have these big orchestral swells in their music and it's not as much
Yeah.
electronic, makes my little violin classical heart happy. So that's more the route that I enjoy my music on, and I think other people like it too. So
Yeah. What advice would you give to somebody? Because this has been a journey for you. You mentioned starting out in 2020, 21. Here you
yep.
are building followers and views on these different platforms, now making money on ads, making money on Spotify from streams. What type of advice would you give?
Uh, my main piece of advice I would give to everyone is just start doing it and do a lot of it. Do massive amounts of quantity and just post it and see what works and see what doesn't work. And understand that as you grow and mature in real life, your content will grow and mature with you. Don't ever get too stuck doing one thing. It's okay to try new things. And if it doesn't work, fine. You can go back to doing the old stuff that you know that does work. So I'm of the belief that quantity will eventually lead to quality, and that's kind of the way that my content has been pushed. And if I'm putting out good stuff, good quality of things right now, and I don't have a team, it's just me. Like everything that I put out there is just 100% in my brain, and I just spend hours and hours and hours trying to perfect it. I can't wait to see 4 or 5 years from now if I do have an editing team, like if I have more engineers, if I have more people involved in the project, because that just frees up decision making for me so I can write better music and make better skits and do all these different things. So yeah, just start making stuff. Quantity will eventually lead to the quality that you want.
So, what time of the day are you most at the top of your game to work on this stuff?
So that's actually a good question because I'm starting to get into a new pattern now where I'm a day ahead of content. So the video that I have going up at about 3 o'clock today, I already like shot last night. And I'm typically most doing stuff creative really early in the morning at like 1, 2 a.m. because when I'm at the studio, that's when no one else is there and I have the whole studio free to myself. But then it's nice if I need to make a video because what I'll do is the video that I made today was an interaction that I had with one of my ex music professors at college. And it's a little exaggeration of the interaction, but it's a good skit idea. And I was like, that I'm going to use that experience that I had today in real life and tell a story about it. And that's a nice thing that I'm learning to do, to take things that I just experience in every normal day life and just put it my own little creative spin on it and tell a story that is entertaining and fun, but people will find it goofy, I hope, and maybe a little bit funny. But
Can you give us like one frame of that video, just like one piece of it? Like, what would somebody expect if they listen to that video?
um, the start of the video goes like, oh, well, it was great to see you today, Professor. The professor turns around and goes, It was great to see. It was great to see you too, kid. By the way, started seeing your videos floating around on Facebook, and then I have this whole interaction between the two of them. Because in reality, my college professor was a viola player, and one of the whole things that I do is I always make fun of viola players because I'm a violin player. Like that's just one of the things that you do. And I have this whole interaction, and then the professor makes fun of me, and then I make fun of the professor, and then it's just goofy, but at the same time, like people are gonna find it entertaining because it actually happened, and they're like, yeah, that sounds about right of what would actually happen if that happened to me. So yeah.
So violin music, I mean, it's I'd say, just like any type of niche or specialty, it's a pretty small population of people that are into that, right? Like if,
Yeah.
if I'm a if I'm a badminton player or a pickleball player or like everyone plays soccer or basketball, but like all these little things, like you have a certain amount of people that are into it.
Mhm.
Um, but like there's enough people out there that love the niche and you got, the followers to back it up, the people that appreciate it. What would you say to somebody that's scared about niching down into their uniqueness or their quirkiness?
I would say that I've had a problem with being too niche based, and I've also had a problem with being too general. Because at one point I was like the devil went down to Georgia guy on TikTok, and it was very general audience, and everyone knew who I was. And then I massively pivoted my content only towards violin stuff, and then I had only like the most hardcore, like two set violin fans, Ray Chin, like classical fans. And so now what I'm trying to do is find that nice middle ground. And my advice to anyone is don't be afraid to niche down and then slowly branch out to a general audience. Or the last thing you want to do is get stuck in a general audience of something that you don't want your brand to be, which I was at one point. And I actually was like losing more followers on TikTok than I was gaining for a little while. And then come February, my TikTok just came alive and all the followers started rolling back in because the content had caught up with it. The TikTok like algorithm recycled all of my Devil Went Down to Georgia stuff out and now realized this was more the content route I was going. So just be patient with it. Like it will come. I'm only 22. I'm gonna be 23 in August. So you just take a look around and see who else is in your niche and don't try and get too like competitive with people who are 5 6 years older than you because you're trying to make up 5 6 years of experience in like 5 months. Just let it sit, keep on the grind. Don't worry about it too much. It will come. Just let your ideas sit there and marinate and get rid of all the bad ideas, create lots of content. Eventually the good quality content will come.
Okay, so part of the reason I asked you the question of when you are most creative is I kind of wanted to allude back to you've got a full-time job.
Mhm. I've got
And
two full-time jobs actually, but yeah.
oh, okay. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so of course I'm an audio engineer in real life. I'm still trying to get ingratiated in the music industry. There's kind of this hazing process where for about 3 years you just kind of hang around long enough for people to be like, okay, he knows what he's doing. And so I'm year 1.5 so far, so I still got a little bit of time to go. And I'm working with producers who have won 2 3 Grammys and like they have some significant experience under the belt. And so it's about who you surround yourself with in the music space. And as of right now, like I'm not making a ton of money doing engineering and stuff like that, but all that income that I'm losing is now starting to be made up in Spotify streams and views, which in retrospect, I'm still improving my engineering because I engineer all my own stuff. So if you want to hear like do I want him as my engineer? I'm like, go look at my catalog of Spotify stuff. I would recommend this on this on this on because these are the most technically sound and the hardest to do, in my opinion. And then people are like, oh, he does know what he's talking about. And then my other halftime job, my other full-time job that I switch between is I go work at a violin shop and I sell violins because I know as much as I possibly can about the instrument. If I talk to the luthiers all the time. Like we just tweaked my violin for like 2 weeks and now it sounds way better than it did before that. But no one would really know that unless they were me because I'm really into like making music with my violin. And you got to know all facets of what you're trying to do. And that's really like the main thing that I'm trying to set myself apart from with everyone else in the industry, whether it be from like the luthiers who make violins on TikTok, which are pretty cool to see. Like they're really into it, and the players who just play electric violins and don't have any fascination with acoustic instruments. I want to know as much as the luthiers do, but be as better, if not a better player than all the people who don't know a bunch about violins. So, you know, riding that line again, trying to figure out where I sit on that. But both those jobs do play towards this. So I kind of focus my life and center around the content that I make. Absolutely.
Okay. Do you sleep much?
I sleep about depends. Last night I didn't go to bed till 3, and I woke up this morning at about 9-ish because there's light that comes through my window and it wakes me up every morning. But so I get 5 to 6 hours of sleep a night on average, but other than that, not really. Sometimes I'll pull an all-nighter. I've done it a few times before on sessions that I just really have to get done, and I'm young, so I can do it, and then I'm just really tired the next day, and I'll sleep for 8 hours, and then I'll be fine. But yeah. Oh, and I'm also doing a master's class on top of that, and I got to write that paper today, so great fun.
Oh, like a master's class.
Master's in business, yeah.
Oh, MBA. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, do you find hours in a different dimension? Like what? Jesus Christ.
No, I just what it's just like when I'm up in the morning, I'm just working, and like I don't, again, it kind of comes back to who I am as a person. I don't like to go out to bars. I don't like to go hang out with a bunch of people. I'm pretty introverted, and I like to work, and I like what I do when I'm being super creative. So like I just work all the time. And sometimes it's work that I don't want to do, and sometimes it's work that I'm like, I really enjoy this. So you got to find the balance between like taking a break for 2 hours and then going back to work, and then like doing fun work while you're doing nothing. Like I'll have a YouTube video on and I'll just be designing like album covers because I find that relaxing and fun. It's like coloring, except it's being productive at the same time. So reframe your work, figure out what is fun, what is not fun. And then when you're doing something that you find fun, count that as your break time. And for 2 hours, you design album covers. For me, for example, is very fun. I'm
Mhm.
designing something and it's relaxing. So I'll turn on a YouTube video for 2 hours. And I actually did that last night because my phone died in here. I was like, for 30 minutes, I'm taking a break, coming back in here, shoot the video. I'll edit it in the morning. And that's what I did. So yeah.
From a standpoint of um, connection, support, because you're in a space where you're doing things that most people just aren't doing, especially with the time that you do spend. Are the people in your circles that you've met that have been a help or a resource that are doing things, creating things to be able to collaborate and share ideas and support each other?
Yeah, I think that now that I've really started to focus on my music, I wanted to do a song a week for 12 weeks, which I realized it wasn't possible due to some family issues, and I was just getting burnt out. And I would rather like take time on some really well thought out projects than just throwing something out a week and having it be meh. I would rather it be really good or really bad. No in between. So it there are certain people that I've certainly like because I hang out at the violin shop and because I hang out at the music studio as much as possible, people start to notice like, oh, this is what he's doing here. Like we can talk about that. And a lot of like Instagram is a great resource, and a lot of violinists have like reached out to me like, hey, you make amazing content. Let's collab sometime. Or just some bigger violin people out there have been like, oh yeah, I've seen your videos. Like all your stuff is great. So it Instagram is probably the best networking resource you can have. It builds your brand, it builds recognition, and you can just DM somebody and make it very business oriented because that's what Instagram is. And that's like 95% of what everyone uses in the music industry. So yeah.
Have you messaged somebody that you didn't expect a response but got a response?
Yes, Tommy Profit. I tagged him in one of my stories as he was one of my favorite producers and songwriters. And he messaged me back, and I have been dying to work with him because he works with NF and all those people. And he messaged me back one day, and I usually don't get like super like starstruck, but because I've studied all his music, I had a little mini freak out session for 10 minutes because I was like, oh, I can't believe that worked. And we'll probably do something in the future, but I talked to him and he said, no, you're making some good stuff. Build up your catalog a little bit more, and in about a year, come back and we'll have a conversation about it. And I was like, all right, cool. So that was probably one of the coolest things I've seen. So
Have you seen anybody take some of the work that you've done, the initiative and successes that you've had, and say, okay, if he can do it, I can do it. Kind of that show somebody the pathway that's
yes,
maybe rubbing
so
off.
yeah, no, I've talked to a few musicians in my space. One of them I'm a good friend with. His name's RJ Hoff. He like tours with Eric Nam, and he does some really good like stuff out in LA, and he lives in LA and stuff. But I just talked to him about 6 months ago, and he was like, "Nah, man, you're making some great content out there. I really need to start making content like you." And he's on tour right now, but he's actually planning on like coming in and making content. And I just talked to another lady in Hungary, actually. She's very sweet. Her name's Annie Grid on Instagram and everything, but she helps out with social media managing for like orchestras and things like that. And we had a whole conversation, and she was like, "You make really good content. I need to like focus on making content and growing my follower count and things like that." And we had a little conversation. She's like, "Do you mind if I do a case study on you on like how you do content and present that to all these followers that I know in Europe for someone who does like violin content really well?" I'm like, "Absolutely, sure." So I've seen her like in the past 3 or 4 days really start to buckle down on post ever since we've had that conversation. But yeah, there's a few people that are like, okay, he knows somewhat what he's talking about, but it's also just like I tell him the exact same advice. Like start with quantity and that will lead to quality. You just have to start making stuff. You'll find out what works and what doesn't work.
When you say quantity, like what's an example of the amount that you're talking about?
So when I first started TikTok back in 2020, I think, that was when I was in my first apartment with my sister. Uh, I was making 4 videos a day, and I think I did that for 6 months straight. I was an animal.
Holy
I would
crap.
I would make a video, post it at 10 a.m., make another video, post that at 2, and then I'd make two more videos and post one at 7 and one at 10. And I did that for 6 months straight. Um, then after about 6 months, I started to drop it down to 2 videos a day. And I continued with that for about 8, 9 months, I think. A little, actually, maybe more than that. It depends on how long I've been doing this. I've been doing this for about 3 years on TikTok. I did 2 videos a day for about a year then. And then it was only recently in November of 2023, I went down to 1 video a day, because I started to lean more towards that skit content and less like trending videos that you see on TikTok and Instagram and whatnot. And that ever since I started doing that in November, I started to see the numbers rise up, and I'm like, okay, I'm on to something here. I'm gonna take off December so I don't have to worry about any Christmas stuff, and I'll just repost everything I did from the past year. And I had 2 videos a day until November, so I had about 300, 400 videos to pick from. So I just went through, reposted all of December, and then January hit. I really started to hit the skits hard and really started to focus on quality of content in January. And then ever since then, like it's the rest is history. Like I'm at 23,000 followers. I hit that this morning on Instagram. My goal is 50,000 by the end of December of this year, and hopefully I'm going to hit that, especially with my next 2 upcoming projects and then my big project in August that I have planned. So yeah, that's what I mean by quantity of just post stuff, and you'll figure out what works and what doesn't work. And when something does work, lean into it, but then figure out who you are as a person, what do you want your brand to be, and then you can drift away from that. Just kind of guide your audience the direction that you want to take it.
So the songs that you've created and some of the names, Hopeless, Talentless, Boundless. Can
Yep.
you share a little bit about kind of the
Well,
meaning or
okay.
backstory?
So that entire EP was an idea that I had way back in, I think, September of 2023. I wanted to do something called my Talentless album. I think I actually have the hat. No, this one. This might be EG hat. I have a hat that says Talentless on it because that's what I wanted to build my whole brand around, because it's the opposite of kind of what everyone does in the violin space. Everyone kind of builds their brand around the idea of that they're talented. And I wanted to be the opposite of that, because what I'm doing as a violin player and as a content creator, and what I still stand for on my philosophy level of why I make content, is that I'm not talented. I just work really hard. I am talentless, and I just am very skilled, and I'm very knowledgeable about what I'm doing. But it's the whole hard work versus like naturally gifted for with talent mentality. And I think that I am naturally gifted within like the songwriting space. Not very many people, especially violinists, can just walk into the studio and just write a song, which is exactly how I do it. But that that hard work and talent didn't come from me just randomly deciding to do that one day. It had been years of developing my songwriting skills through college and figuring out what workflow works the best for me, which one doesn't. So that's my whole brand, is like talentless, of like hard work will eventually pay off. Focus on what you can do, practice your violin. Hard work is the only thing that defines you, not the talent that you're given. So that whole idea of talentless was made in September, and I wanted to do a Liss album. So I went talentless, voiceless, hopeless, boundless, minuteless, and I think I have one more in there. I don't remember off the top of my head. I wrote all those songs in like a few days, but that whole
In just a couple of days, no big deal.
yeah. But that whole like thing is under the scope of like my first album was talentless. And then I'm thinking about doing like keeping that theme of talentless when I do some more albums that are more centered towards a story of about myself.